In 1983, the European Parliament decided that the Community's flag should be that used by the Council of Europe in 1955. In 1985, it was adopted by all EU leaders as the official emblem of the European Communities, later to become the European Union. In addition, all European institutions now have their own emblems. It features a circle of 12 gold stars on a blue background. They stand for the ideals of unity, solidarity, and harmony among the peoples of Europe. The European Parliament has 3 places of work: Brussels, Belgium; Luxembourg City, Luxembourg; and Strasbourg, France. Luxembourg City is home to the administrative offices. Meetings of the whole Parliament, plenary sessions, take place in Strasbourg and in Brussels. Committee meetings are held in Brussels. The goals of the EU are to promote peace, its values, and the well-being of its citizens, offer freedom, security, and justice without internal borders, support a sustainable development based on balanced economic growth and price stability, a highly competitive market economy with full employment and social progress and environmental protection, combat social exclusion and discrimination. The EU is also committed to promote scientific and technological progress, enhance economic, social, and territorial cohesion and solidarity among EU countries, respect its rich cultural and linguistic diversity, establish an economic and monetary union whose currency is the euro. The EU values are an integral part of the EU life. They are common to the EU countries in a society in which inclusion, tolerance, justice, solidarity, and non-discrimination prevail. Human dignity is inviolable. It must be respected, protected, and constitutes the real basis of fundamental rights. Freedom of movement gives citizens the right to move and reside freely within the Union. Individual freedoms such as respect for private life, freedom of thought, religion, assembly, expression, and information are protected by the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights. The functioning of the EU is founded on representative democracy. Being a European citizen also means enjoying political rights. Every adult EU citizen has the right to stand as a candidate and to vote in elections to the European Parliament. Equality is about equal rights for all citizens before the law. The principle of equality between women and men underpins all European policies and is the basis for European integration. It applies in all areas. The principle of equal pay for equal work became part of the Treaty of Rome in 1957. Although inequalities still exist, the EU has made significant progress. The EU is based on the rule of law. Everything the EU does is founded on treaties voluntarily and democratically agreed by its EU countries. Law and justice are upheld by an independent judiciary. The EU countries gave final jurisdiction to the European Court of Justice, whose judgments have to be respected by all. Human rights are protected by the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights. These cover the right to be free from discrimination on the basis of sex, racial or ethnic origin, religion or belief, disability, age, or sexual orientation, the right to the protection of your personal data, and/or the right to get access to justice. These goals and values form the basis of the EU and are laid out in the Lisbon Treaty, the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights. In 2012, the EU was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for advancing the causes of peace, reconciliation, democracy, and human rights in Europe. From economic to political union, the predecessor of the EU was created in the aftermath of the Second World War. The first steps were to foster economic cooperation, the idea being that countries that trade with one another become economically interdependent and so more likely to avoid conflict. The result was the European Economic Community, EEC, created in 1958 and initially increasing economic cooperation between 6 countries: Belgium, Germany, France, Italy, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands. Since then, 22 other members joined, and a huge single market, also known as the internal market, has been created and continues to develop towards its full potential. What began as a purely economic union has evolved into an organization spanning policy areas, from climate, environment and health to external relations and security, justice and migration. A name change from the European Economic Community, EEC, to the European Union, EU, in 1993 reflected this. The EU has delivered more than half a century of peace, stability and prosperity, helped raise living standards and launched a single European currency, the euro. More than 340 million EU citizens in 19 countries now use it as their currency and enjoy its benefits. Thanks to the abolition of border controls between EU countries, people can travel freely throughout most of the continent, and it has become much easier to live, work and travel abroad in Europe. All EU citizens have the right and freedom to choose in which EU country they want to study, work or retire. Every EU country must treat EU citizens in exactly the same way as its own citizens for employment, social security and tax purposes. The EU's main economic engine is the single market. It enables most goods, services, money and people to move freely. The EU aims to develop this huge resource to other areas like energy, knowledge and capital markets to ensure that Europeans can draw the maximum benefit from it. The EU remains focused on making its governing institutions more transparent and democratic. Decisions are taken as openly as possible and as closely as possible to the citizen. More powers have been given to the directly elected European Parliament, while national parliaments play a greater role, working alongside the European institutions. The EU is governed by the principle of representative democracy, with citizens directly represented at Union level in the European Parliament and Member States represented in the European Council and in the Council of the EU. European citizens are encouraged to contribute to the democratic life of the Union by giving their views on EU policies during their development or suggest improvements to existing laws and policies. The European Citizens' Initiative empowers citizens to have a greater say on EU policies that affect their lives. Citizens can also submit complaints and inquiries concerning the application of EU law. The EU in the world. The European Union is the largest trade bloc in the world. It is the world's biggest exporter of manufactured goods and services and the biggest import market for over 100 countries. Free trade among its members was one of the EU's founding principles. This is possible thanks to the single market. Beyond its borders, the EU is also committed to liberalizing world trade. The EU is committed to helping victims of man-made and natural disasters worldwide and supports over 120 million people each year. Collectively, the EU and its constituent countries are the world's leading donor of humanitarian aid. The EU plays an important role in diplomacy and works to foster stability, security and prosperity, democracy, fundamental freedoms and the rule of the law at international level. Here included some of our founding fathers whose work of a life was to give us a future of peace, prosperity and democracy. The same peace, prosperity and democracy they were not allowed to have. Among them, Konrad Adenauer, German statesman who served as the first Chancellor of the Federal Republic of Germany, West Germany, from 1949 to 1963. Joseph Bach, a Luxembourgish politician and lawyer. He was the 15th Prime Minister of Luxembourg, serving for 11 years, from the 16th of July 1926 until the 5th of November 1937. He returned to the position after World War II, serving for another 4 years, from the 29th of December 1953 until the 29th of March 1958. The 1982-83 academic year at the College of Europe was named in his honor. Johann Wilhelm Beyen was a Dutch banker, civil servant, politician and diplomat. He served as Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Netherlands from 1952 to 56. Beyen played an important role in the creation of the European Economic Community and is regarded as one of the founding fathers of the European Union. The 1981-82 academic year at the College of Europe was named in his honor. Sir Winston Churchill was a British politician, army officer and writer. He was the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom from 1940 to 1945, when he led Britain to victory in the Second World War, and again from 1951 to 1955. Following the Second World War, he was convinced that only a united Europe could guarantee peace. His aim was to eliminate the European ills of nationalism and warmongering once and for all. Alcide Amedeo Francesco de Gasperi was an Italian statesman who founded the Christian Democracy Party and served as Prime Minister of Italy in 8 successive coalition governments from 1945 to 1953. De Gasperi was the last Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Italy, serving under both Victor Emmanuel III and Umberto II. He was also the first Prime Minister of the Italian Republic, and also briefly served as provisional head of state after the Italian people voted to end the monarchy and establish a republic. His 8-year term in office remains a landmark of political longevity for a leader in modern Italian politics. A devout Catholic, he was one of the founding fathers of the European Union, along with fellow Italian Altiero Spinelli. Altiero Spinelli, an Italian politician, political theorist and European federalist, referred to as one of the founding fathers of the European Union. A communist and anti-fascist militant in his youth, he spent 10 years imprisoned by the fascist regime. Having grown disillusioned with Stalinism, he broke with the Italian Communist Party in 1937. Interned in Ventotene during World War II, he drafted along fellow democratic socialists the Manifesto for a Free and United Europe, most commonly known as the Ventotene Manifesto, in 1941, considered a precursor of the European integration process. He had a leading role in the foundation of the European Federalist movement and had strong influence on the first few decades of post-World War II European integration. Later, he helped to relaunch the integration process in the 1980s. By the time of his death, he had been a member of the European Commission for 6 years, a member of the European Parliament for 10 years right up until his death. The main building of the European Parliament in Brussels is named after him. The 1987-88 academic year at the College of Europe and the 2009-2010 academic year of the European College of Parma were named in his honor. Simone Veil, lawyer, politician and feminist. Simone Veil served as France's health minister between 1974 and 1979. In that year, she became a member of the European Parliament and was elected its president, remaining in the role until 1982. This made her the president of the first directly elected parliament and the first female president. Veil's childhood and traumatic experiences during the Second World War sowed the seeds for a commitment to a unified Europe, a cause she would champion for the rest of her life.